We're up to The Queen's Play by Dorothy Dunnett. This is book 2 in the Lymond Chronicles. I am now discussing chapter 4, which begins on page 43, and this is called, I can't pronounce this correctly, Rouen, Find Scientific Works Without Warning. So this is the chapter where we've just found out that Lymond has completely screwed everything up with the king because he's assumed the king was a fake king and was very impolite. This is also the chapter where we find out who Lymond is, and then he goes to that secret society printing press and causes chaos. So Phelim Lymond has... when I first read this, I went to reread this chapter, but when I first read this, I thought Lymond was Lymond, and I was just like, what is going on? So Lymond is now kind of a hero among people in France who maybe aren't the biggest fan of propriety and being polite to the king. They kind of find it very fascinating that this random no-named Irishman has stood up to the king. So he's kind of like the bad boy now, which Lymond seems to not mind at all. Lymond, we did not see the scene where Taddy Boy found out about this, but I imagine Lymond would have been fuming. So, there's like one little moment here where Lymond is kind of reflecting on needing to go back to Ireland, and he's like, oh well, he's going to send a letter back to Mistress Boyle, just explaining and taking his leave. After all, they have to live in France, and Una will have to marry a Frenchman. So he's kind of just like, oh well, I can't have Una anyway. Did he just really want to like hook up with Una? That's what I'm getting from this. Oh, I love the scene between the Queen Dowager and Lymond and Jenny Fleming and Margaret Erskine. That was just fantastic. We get a lot of exposition, like in different parts, like giving us a history account just to bring us up to date. And we got quite a bit of that from about the Queen Dowager, and I really enjoyed that. Like her story just sounds really intense. Like she's had a baby, then had to leave that son to go over and marry in a country that's not her own, and she lost 2 children, I think, and only one survived, which is the young Queen Mary. Lost her husband, is struggling because there's a lot of warring factions in Scottish politics. It's just, man. And the fact that she's brought all of the people that she wants to keep a close eye on with her, like, you know, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, makes me think that, you know, she's actually quite selfless in a way, or at least she's doing it for her daughter, not necessarily for Scotland. Like, I'm not convinced that the Queen Dowager actually cares too much about Scotland, but if she cares about her daughter, and through her daughter, who's going to have to deal with Scotland because she's the queen, she cares about Scotland. That's my view of it. Her comment here about dealing with men. Before she came to Dieppe, the powerful and violent men in her train were nipping and kicking and plunging at one another and at the ribbons which held them. This is a brilliant line. Like, she's dealing with all of these warring men, not like sword fighting men, but like politically warring, who are like at each other's throats, but also kind of at the Queen Dowager's throat as well. And she's just trying to hold it all together. So we have Tom Erskine on page 45 just hating his life once again. He doesn't hate his life, but it's just hilarious. He's like, he's lamenting that he told his wife Lymond's identity. He's just like, should not have done that. Oh my gosh. He knows that Lymond's not here for the Queen, or the Dowager Queen. And Tom thinks in his head that Lymond's visit has no vital purpose. Now this is like starting to bug me because what the hell is Lymond's purpose in France? It's because I don't know that, I'm struggling. And like listening to the group of people who did the Lymond book club back in 2020, I'm coming to understand that this is a like Lymond trying to find himself book, and what the hell is he doing with his life? We still have not established Lymond's age. This is driving me mad. Because I thought he was like late 20s, early 30s back in Game of Kings, and now 2 or 3 years has passed since then. But like more likely he was in his early 20s back at Game of Kings, and so now he's in his mid 20s. Yeah, he's definitely got lots of years to try to find himself. 20s are just such an interesting age. It's interesting what Tom thinks of Lymond. He literally thinks in his head, this is on page 45 of Lymond, his presence or absence will make no difference to the Queen, he's meaning. And I just don't know why Tom is thinking that. Tom was literally there witnessing Lymond as Lymond took a bullet or like got seriously gravely injured in order to prevent the news of Queen Mary going on a boat to Scotland from reaching the English. He martyred himself for this. And Tom thinks that his absence or presence is going to make no difference. Tom, are you serious, man? I think Lymond's whole trick is that he makes people believe that his presence or absence isn't going to make a difference, but it makes all of the difference. And I think we have the theme of the book just after that, when the Queen Mother is like, "Who is Lymond working for, damn it?" Not in those words. And Tom says, "Himself." And then he's like, "Actually, no one. Himself, no one." And that's the theme of the book right here. Lymond doesn't know who he's working for and what he's doing. So at least Tom has figured out that Lymond is struggling with his own purpose, I think. Well, I like to think that Lymond is struggling with his own purpose because I like to think that Lymond is psychologically torturing himself, because we like a tortured Lymond. I love the Queen Dowager, who, once again, she just seems like really put together. It says here, she checked her temper, waited, and then spoke in an even voice. Like she's a seasoned politician, and she's very mature in that she knows her emotions and she knows how to keep them in check. Of course, she is asking to take Lymond in his failure and not in his success. And that proves that this queen doesn't understand how Lymond operates. Lymond, I think he runs away from things. And when he's failed at something, he doesn't seek help from authority. That's the last thing he does. When he fails, he actually runs away from authority and goes towards the streets and the people on the ground and tries to weasel his way back into success that way. He never appeals to authority. So the fact that the Queen is trying to get Lymond in his failure, that she perceives as a failure, Lymond would probably think it's a failure, but he's not thinking, I don't think Lymond thinks that he is a failure. But the fact that the Queen thinks that she can catch him in that way means that she's projecting onto Lymond the idea, and she's quite right to do so, because most people would think like this. Most people, when they have failure, if they were offered a job from authority, they would take that because it's something that they can do. They've been recognized for what they are, even when they've done something wrong. But Lymond is not like most people. So she's just assuming that this would be the best time to take him, but it's the worst time. So Tom's just going over and over. He's like, he won't be committed. He told me himself. He's just like, can't you see? Lymond has red flags everywhere. Don't go near him. But then, of course, Lymond rocks up and is revealed as Taddy Boy Bella. I was like that at the page. Oh my God. Lymond is so funny. He's because he keeps having to put a mask on and then like take it off. He's like, I apologize for all these entrances. Tom never knows if he should send for a bishop or start a round of applause. It's really funny. I mean, at the end of the day, Lymond was summoned by the Queen and Lymond appeared. So there's an element of obedience here. He obeyed these summons. Like, he's not completely without deference. Then we get a little bit of a background here. So apparently Lymond did a lot of study up on Lymond, which obviously we knew he would have done that. And the irony that Lymond kind of wanted someone who was a little bit irresponsible to tag along behind, but because, you know, he needed someone irresponsible in order to have them accept a fake Irishman into their party, but it was that very irresponsibility that that is now getting them sent back. I love how it says here, the Master of Coulter simply reminded her with unvarying deference that what he did in France or out of it by their mutual agreement was his own affair and not hers. Lymond does not want anyone to control his mind or his loyalties. It's the one thing that has been very consistent about his character, is that he wants his own mind and the ability to make up his mind about what to do with it. He's never actually done what anyone has told him to do, unless it's been something he's already made up his mind that he would do that thing. And Dunnett describes Lymond as someone who could explode into fire and brimstone when he chose. I really like that. That is such a good description. But could be equally formidable in the language of etiquette, and had managed to give Jenny Fleming a chaste verbal trouncing for her morning's work at the bridge. Lymond must have been furious when Jenny Fleming basically came up to Lymond and didn't reveal his identity, but that was not going to be a good interaction. And I think Lymond can see that Jenny Fleming is a dangerous person for the Queen because of her disregard for safety and just doing whatever she wants. I wouldn't mind some more scenes between Jenny and Lymond. So then Lymond's walking back really late in the street, and the street's getting ready for this grand entry, which is just so ridiculous, the things that humans do. Oh my gosh. And there's like a hilarious scene where there's like, I'm assuming a prostitute calling after him. I'm just confused as to if Lymond's walking down the street as Lymond. It says here, Rowan's women were notorious. A mocking voice called after him, and below the mask momentarily was the twitch of a smile. Is that because Lymond is like, even with my beer gut, I still got it? Or is this his network of prostitutes like he had with Molly? I don't know. Although after that he slips into an alley and then comes out pot-bellied. So maybe he just had a mask on at that time. But I mean, Lymond, go on and have some fun. Nowhere in this book has it been confirmed that he's ever had a relationship with a woman or a man. Oh, sorry, apart from definitely, what's her name? Margaret Lennox. Okay, definitely Margaret Lennox. That's the only relationship that we've confirmed that Lymond has had. Sexual relationship. Other than that, he's chaste, according to this book. There's a scene here. So as he's coming back, Robin Stewart finds Lymond, and they have a chat about Lymond's stupidity with the king. And Lymond basically sums up the entire interaction by saying that Lymond suspects that Lymond kind of might have known that it was the real king, but continued to be impolite anyway. He knew he could make a smart success of being outrageous. And so he sums that up, and Robin Stewart is taken aback, and he's like, because Robin Stewart remembers being quite impressed by Lymond. I'm going to call him Lymond, but it's Taddy Boy. back on the ship when they were talking initially. And every time Robin Stewart has had an interaction with Taddy Boy, he's just been thoroughly impressed at the intellect radiating out of this like random Irish olive. And because of that, Robin Stewart, I think, is quite attracted to Lymond in the sense that he kind of wants to be like Lymond, at least have that verbal wit that Taddy Boy has. So it says here, this is page 48, Robin Stewart recalled suddenly that he had been struck before with this man. And I think because of that, Robin then wants to show off to Lymond and invites him back to this place with, what's his name, Michelle or Michael Harrison, with this secret society printing press. So Robin Stewart and Lymond, I've got to call him Lymond, I'm not going to call him Taddy Boy. So Robert Stewart and Taddy Boy / Lymond rock up at this place, and Robin Stewart goes down to get the host and leaves Lymond to sort of chill upstairs for a bit, which is where Lymond sort of is looking like, whenever Lymond has a moment to himself, he's like Sherlock Holmes. He's just constantly observing things and trying to figure things out. When Robin Stewart comes back up, there's this interaction where Robin kind of insults O'Liamro and says, O'Liamro always looks down on people. And then Lymond's like, well, aren't you doing that right now? So Taddy Boy kind of gives Robin Stewart a bit of shit, but then backs away because Lymond realizes that he kind of wants Robin Stewart on his side. So then then he sort of makes Robin Stewart feel a little bit better. And this is demonstrated in this line here on page 50. A calmness had come to Robin Stewart, a calmness wrought, had he recognized it, so he hadn't recognized it, by a man used to dealing with men who had taken time to feed the lions of envy, curiosity, and aggression with these tidbits and set them temporarily asleep. So Lymond knows when he's dealing with a man who is racked by envy or curiosity or aggression, and Lymond knows exactly what to feed them just to keep that lion sleeping and to keep that person liking him. And Robin Stewart didn't realize that. So look, Robin Stewart is not a good socialite. He would make a terrible politician because he just doesn't have the good insight into reading people like Lymond does. And this is, I don't know who I would compare Robin Stewart to, but I think the best comparison I've got is Richard Crawford. A part of me thought that Robin Stewart is going to be like the new Will Scott, but no, I think Robin Stewart is so much more like Richard. I think Robin Stewart and Richard would get along really well. Robin Stewart should go back and work for Richard, but Lymond should send him back. What if that actually happens? But I feel so sorry for Robin because Robin knows that he's just not like the sharpest tool in the box. He knows that. He's like, I know myself and I don't need to like what I know. Like, that's a hard thing to say about yourself. When I read that, I thought, God, Robin Stewart at least is really honest with himself. Like, I like this guy. Despite him not being super sharp, he at least knows and is honest about who he is and what he does and doesn't like about himself. And then he's like, teach me how to be successful. He's asking this to Taddy Boy. But essentially he then goes, teach me how to be successful or how to do without it. And he says that bitterly. So this is just like a real deep heart to heart where Robin Stewart is basically admitting that he doesn't like himself and that he doesn't feel he's successful and he's unhappy about that. Like, he's just admitting this to Taddy Boy, and he's asking Taddy Boy, can you, like, how do I be successful like you? Or at least how do I be okay with not being successful so that I'm not torn to pieces by this? That's a really deep thing to admit to a person you've known for like days. And I don't know, like, I have like massive respect for Robin Stewart right now. it's really easy to look down on him being like, well, Robin, you're just not as smart as Lymond. But I mean, there is so much that I can see of myself in Robin Stewart, because I mean, I think we all have feelings like Robin Stewart at some point in our lives. Like, if only we were just slightly better at something, if only we were born with a little bit more money, if only we weren't so frustrated by not being as successful as we once dreamed. Well, I mean, I will speak for myself. I will not project this on all of you angelic people out there. So then Lymond figures out that this is a printing press, and Robin Stewart's like, oh my god, he figured it out, and goes to put his hands on his sword, and then decides against actually doing anything, because he's like, this is an Irishman who's going to be gone in 3 days. What am I worried about if he even knows that there's a printing press here? And also but Lymond sees that thought process happening in Robin Stewart's eyes. Lymond's like, he must be thinking that his disguise at least is extremely successful, because if Lymond is able to trick people into not being threatened by him, that is the ultimate way of disguising yourself. Lymond would be a really, really powerful villain. Very powerful. He could still be a villain. Like, Lymond could literally be an anti-villain. He could end up in this whole series, he could be a seriously intense anti-villain. I mean, I don't think Lymond is a villain. I think he's more, and he's certainly not a hero. He's probably much closer to being an anti-hero, I would say Lymond is. But that's hard, because I think he genuinely wants good things and he genuinely wants peace. Yeah, I do wonder what Lymond's character arc is going to be, because we saw his character arc in just the last book, a sort of a microcosm of what is to come over the whole series. I just wonder if we're looking at a flat character arc for Lymond. Are we going to get not much change? I find flat character arcs actually fascinating, because you go up and down and up and down and up and down, but arrive where you started, just with more knowledge. And I think it's a really realistic place to be, especially because he started so young and insightful. I'll talk about that more at another time, I think. I'll have more idea about what Lymond's character arc is going to be like at the end of book 2. The end of book 1 just seemed to be its own story, and I feel like this might not be its own story as much as book 1. We'll see. I do like the montage of Lymond going down the stairs into this printing press and like kind of pausing now and then, just being like, am I really going to do this? Like, who the hell? I could be walking in on anyone here. And then he even sees George Douglas, and Lymond must be going, fuck's sake, why is he here? But then the other half of Lymond is like, oh, we're absolutely going to do this. This is a new environment and I'm going to play. And then when he sees George Douglas, he's like, oh yeah, absolutely doing this. Because secretly, 100%, George Douglas and Lymond, it says here on page 52, had more than once matched their wits in the fertile jungle of treachery and betrayal. Of all the Scots at court, except Erskine, Sir George alone knew Francis Crawford of Lymond really well. So I definitely think that George Douglas and Lymond have a really good character chemistry on page. But Lymond's like, there's still time to retreat. But then he smiles and he's like, he runs downstairs. He's such a child in this way. I wonder if this is part of the story, is he's trying to come to terms with the fact that Lymond wants to do lots of good things, but he cannot help but fall face down into mischief. And like, this is good line, like a rare smile flickered over the Olive's dark face, and he ran downstairs lightly to join them. When making a choice between doing nothing and doing something, he always chooses something because he always wants to be in the action. And maybe part of Lymond's story is that he's going to have to face that might not be the best thing for him long term. As Lymond starts interacting as Taddy Boy Bella with all these people and everyone falls in love with him instantly, Robin Stewart is like full of pride because he's brought Lymond to this fray of people, but also jealous because everyone likes Lymond better, naturally. And that is such an interesting mix of emotions to have, and very relatable. And once again, I just love Robin Stewart just being, he's just so real. He's great. And this is very similar to Richard as well. Lymond meets Abernathy, one of the keepers of the Royal Menageries of France. And they kind of get along really well. Robin Stewart comes up and is awfully racist towards him and racist towards Abernathy, and then Abernathy retaliates by like trying to ruin Robin Stewart's jacket by spilling ink on it by throwing a knife, and then Lymond stops that from happening by throwing the knife to stop the ink from falling. And this is interesting reading back on it because I've read forward a bit and I know that Abernathy is Turkey Matt's brother, and that means that Abernathy knew who Lymond was at the beginning, and I think Abernathy probably knew at that point that Lymond is a good person, and so even when his plan to ruin Robin Stewart's jacket was thwarted, he kind of just like, well, that's probably the right thing to do. And also Lymond probably didn't want Robin Stewart's jacket to be ruined because he's trying to keep Robin Stewart in his good books and make his life easy. And just in general, I think Lymond tries to do the right thing where possible, and there's no point doing a bad thing to a person, even though that person has been utterly racist to you prior. Yeah, like Lymond is not an eye for an eye kind of a person, I don't think. He doesn't seek revenge necessarily. And then Lymond finds out that they're about to be sprung, that the guard are going to come and find out about this printing press. This was a little bit confusing. I had to sort of read this really slowly. And then decides to put on this entire show where actually this is not a printing press. We're all just here having fun, making fun of and pretending to be the king on his entry. I found that a bit unbelievable, but like Lymond was hooked up, suspended, this is on page 55, gently swaying above the packed audience from the blocks and pulleys on the roof. Okay. Like they would have had to have acted pretty damn quick to get all this sorted when they were only 2 blocks away. But I'm not complaining. It is hard for your imagination not to run when you have in your mind Lymond suspended in leather by pulleys and ropes. I don't know where my brain is going. I mean, I do know where my brain is going, but we won't talk about that. Okay, so when Lymond gets back and wakes up Olimro, and Lymond is in full Scots accent here, because it says his voice was pleasant and without accent, clear as a bell. So when it says without accent, I'm assuming he's got his Scottish accent. Interesting. I don't know why he's dropped his Irish accent. He must have, either he totally was drunk, which I doubt it, or he just felt so safe with Olimro at that point that he just was like, I'm sick of doing this Irish accent. It must be hard always to do a different accent all the time. I wonder if he did it in front of the Queen. But there's like one line here that just made me laugh out loud. This is on page 56. Lymond says to Olimro when he's back, and he's covered in all this paste because I think he fell in something when they were doing the fake show. God, I'm full of sour wine and cow's feet, and you could make scones from my underwear. That was just the funniest and most disgusting thing. And it's gross. Oh my gosh. And then Lymond makes a bet to Lymond saying, I reckon I could get us to stay here. Yeah, Lymond was not drunk. He dropped his to a Scottish accent on purpose, definitely. So then 3 days pass, they're under this like sort of house arrest, these Irishmen. Lots of people are coming to visit them. Robin Stewart stays there the whole time. I feel like Robin Stewart is definitely getting slightly obsessed with Taddy Boy at this point, because he keeps observing Taddy Boy with other people who come to visit. And it says here, this is on page 59, he analysed Taddy Boy's recent performance. After all his questions, it was hard to find out why, to Mr. Bella, inspiration seemed to come easily, and to Robin it came not at all. Poor Robin. People are different. No point envying what you don't have. And then the weirdest part of this so far is the stuff with Una. So Una and Taddy Boy have a chat by the fire. I think this is on the Tuesday night before they're about to go home after the entry the next day. And Una basically admits to Taddy Boy that she suspects that he isn't who he truly says he is, and that he's an imposter. And also says that she knows that he helped hide the printing press. So this event from 2 days ago has somehow spread around in circles that she has found out about this. So she's well connected, Una. She knows, or at least she listens well. And so Lymond is now paying attention to Una, I would say, most definitely. There is definitely, he doesn't seem particularly happy with that talk. And I do wonder, Una's like, women grow in the fields of France like turnips, don't you care for them? And Lymond replies with, experiments have been a little restricted by the curfew. So either he's saying, I can't sleep around because of the curfew, which I don't think he is. He's saying, I can't, my network is limited because of the curfew. So if Una is aware that Lymond is connected via women, she's basically playing that card and saying, I know that you are like this. So she's giving away information about Lymond that she knows. And now Lymond knows that she knows. Anyway, it's just a weird interaction. I do not know what her role is. So we know that she's Irish. We know that she doesn't seem to like Liam Rowe or Taddy Boy. We know that she was the one that delivered the message to Liam Rowe about the king probably being a fake king, which was incorrect. We don't know if she knew that was going to be correct or incorrect information at the time. And we know that Liam Rowe likes her. I don't know. Interesting. Anyway, that is all for this chapter 4. What I'm going to do from now on is I'm going to try, just to avoid you guys having to check back to see if I'm uploading a video all the time, I'm just going to try and make a regular schedule where I upload once a week, probably on a Monday evening, which is Monday day for UK, Europe, and early Monday morning for US. And if I don't have a video up, I will let you know in advance that I haven't managed to do one for that week or whatever, or that it's delayed. So I'll put that in the community section. Okay, see you later.